Welcome to the Scale Up Valley podcast, where we bring the best founders and investors to help you scale a business from 1 million to 1 trillion. Today's guest is Stian, the CEO at Aquaticode. Stian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here.
It's a pleasure. And you are coming from Norway, from the north of Norway, right?
Yeah, so I grew up in the north of Norway, which is in the Arctic part of the world. But actually, I live in a place called Stavanger now, which is in the southwest of Norway. So it's a little bit different climate zone. It's not as cold, but it just rains all the time here. So I'm not sure if I made the right choice.
How far away from Oslo?
I think it's around 45 minutes by airplane.
Oh,
so Oslo is in the southeast, and then Stavanger is in the southwest.
Okay. So and I forgot because I've been in Bergen and in Oslo. Bergen is closer to the city where you are today, or yeah.
Yes, much closer. Bergen is also in the same region, so that's the southwest of Norway. But it actually takes a bit of time to drive there because you know the geography of Norway. We have a lot of coast and mountains and fjords, so you kind of have to. It's not a straight road.
Exactly. But awesome. For the ones who didn't have the pleasure to get to know you, please give us a little bit of a background and what motivated you to start Aquaticode.
Sure. So my name is Stian Rognlid. I'm the CEO of Aquaticode, which is an early stage company that builds AI for aquaculture. Before doing this, I used to work for a company called Nutreco/Skvetting, which is the world's largest aquafeed producer. And I had several positions within that company. I spent some years in Brazil and then some years in Ireland before I joined the head office to lead Skvetting's global RAS efforts. So RAS is recirculating aquaculture systems. It's basically a system that allows you to grow salmon or another aquatic species on land in a constrained facility. And if you go back even further, I used to work as a management consultant, and I've also been an active angel investor for some years before I even started in Aquaticode. I can say a little bit about Aquaticode. So
yes,
we are the product of 15 different industrial R&D partnerships across the value chain of multiple aquatic species. So we are heavily R&D based, and we launched a product for gender sorting salmon last year, a small product, a scanner, and now this year we actually placed our first machine, the Sort Pro, at the customer facility. And what this machine does, it's gender sort salmon at very high speed, 10,000 fish per hour. And I know it's probably not the scope of this podcast, but it does it. If you gender separate salmon, the males grow faster than the females, so you can have a shorter production cycle for the males. So that's one of the advantages. And then we're launching a product for shrimp, I think this year as well.
Got it. Sounds amazing, and I know that in terms of we are seeing this trend even in the podcasts. People also, and especially experienced executives and operators that want to start their own companies and see the potential to de-risk a little bit their journey by joining a venture builder, and sometimes also because the venture builder already has an idea that matches well. They also help with finding a co-founder, etc. So if you could kind of let us know a little bit more about your journey and why you decided to join a venture builder, a CEO, and what you see as the pros and cons of the model. I think this will be beneficial also for other founders.
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I didn't actually start Aquaticode. The company was started by the venture builder, but I think it's a fantastic model, and I'm happy to talk about it. So Naker Capital, which is the company behind Aquaticode, is a very competent owner. They have a very strong track record in the intersection of computer vision and biology, which is, of course, where we operate. It was started by Motte Schneeberg some years ago, and he started it after the sale of Face.com, which is basically the algorithms or the technology powering face recognition in Instagram and Facebook and Apple albums. So it was started actually with a very strong insight in the domain. And what they do and what I really admire is that they have entrepreneurs and staff. So Aquaticode was actually started by a person called Al Brenner, who's the chairman of Aquaticode today. And they are constantly looking for new areas where they can leverage their expertise. I think what's interesting is they actually do cast a very wide net. So they are looking at current and future attractiveness of different sectors. They're looking at the technological maturity, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And to give you one example, I know that when they were thinking about Aquaticode, they were also looking at silkworms, so basically silk production, right? But they ended up choosing aquaculture and putting considerable effort into the industry, which to me it makes a lot of sense. You know, feeding 9.7 billion people by 2050 is the greatest challenge of our time, and aquaculture reduces the strain on nature compared to other types of protein production. So the nutritional density of salmon and shrimp is very high. Carbon footprint is lower than land-based animals, at least most of them. And also the land use and the water use is also significantly lower. And so to go back to the venture builder, so what Naker does is they very early, when they start a company, complement their technological prowess with a competence advisory board consisting of industry titans, basically people who have a very strong and a very long track record within, in this case, aquaculture.
Right.
And once they plant a seed for a company and it starts to grow, they hand over the reins for the company to somebody or management with relevant experience to running that particular company. So for Aquaticode, of course, it was natural to go to the aquaculture industry and then hire someone, which in this case was me.
Right, sounds great. And on your side, what attracted you to join an opportunity like Aquaticode and to join this concept, right?
Yeah, I've been an early stage investor for some years, as I mentioned, and I've always been attracted to entrepreneurship. Right, innovation, and innovation has also been a constant through my career. So I've been able to work with entrepreneurs and innovators for many years. Yep. And I always figured that at some point I would join a startup or as in this case a scale up myself, and I thought that world seemed tremendously interesting. And then, Naker Capital came along and they've started this company within this industry, which I really like to be in aquaculture and where I have, domain knowledge already. And it was just a very good merging of two worlds for me. Right. So I was very intrigued when they first contacted me, and I didn't really have a choice. This opportunity for me was perfect. And
it was nice. So it was kind of an inbound opportunity that you start considering. So it was not something that you saw an opportunity there and you decided to start talking with them. It was the opposite. Say they came to you because they thought that you would be a great fit for the role.
Yes, and I was actually very happy where I was. So that was I wasn't actively looking at opportunity. It was actually one of the guys in the advisory board of Aquaticode that had mentioned me to Naker Capital, and so that's sort of how it all came to be.
Happened. Okay, sounds great. So it was not something that you were thinking about, that you were planning sometime I will start my own company, but it was something that of course maybe you thought about it, but the opportunity came and you said, oh, now it's too good to refuse to join a challenge like this one, right? So...
Yeah, exactly.
And in terms of the stage of growth, where are you with Aquaticode at the moment? Team-wise, whatever the metrics you can share, of course, and what you can disclose.
Yeah, I mean, So I would consider us a scale up. We have launched products, and we have. I mean, we're fortunate because we're seeing a lot of demands for the products. So and there's a hardware component to our product, right? We're building machines powered by AI in the case of the products that we now have in the market. So where we are as a company is we are scaling up manufacturing of those machines. We are working to fulfill the contracts that we have entered.
Got it. And I know that you have a very interesting policy in what relates to talent, team, also the remote policy, where you have a policy of candidate quality first. So you might have some time zone restrictions or not, but you really are looking for the best talent wherever they are located. I think this is quite unique. We are seeing more and more startups going in this direction. But now that the pandemic is going away, we are seeing also now a lot of companies going into hybrid modes and not being so remote friendly anymore. So it's always exciting to see a startup that is really embracing remotes and having a very diverse team also as well since the beginning. What has been your experience so far, and what is your policy, and what can you share with other founders, operators, executives that are leading their scale-ups?
Yeah, so I think we are a little bit of a product of the pandemic. Actually, we started doing serious hiring when the pandemic still was ongoing, and we made a very conscious choice, and we've stuck to the choice that we will hire the best candidate independent of geography. The work that we do, the nature of the work, means that you can work from anywhere, right? You don't necessarily have to be under the same roof. Although, of course, meeting every once in a while and having sprints, crunches, I think is important. But for most of the time, it works well for us to work remotely and to coordinate over teams and to do all of that. I think for us, it's been a tremendous opportunity, because artificial intelligence as a field, machine learning, I think is it's a growing field in Norway for sure, where I'm based. But then you have these major technological hubs. You have Tel Aviv, you have Sao Paulo, you have Silicon Valley, right? And we've been able to hire talent from all of them. And actually, more interestingly, I think talent from these hubs have sought us out to work with the aquaculture industry. So I do think it creates some major opportunities. Of course, I mean, there's challenges as well. You mentioned time zones. So we say that we will hire anywhere, but we have maybe we are trying to limit ourselves between Tel Aviv and Silicon Valley because time difference does make it can be complicated in terms of meetings. Right. It can be complicated, but it also, I think, can be a benefit, because you tend to have a lot of concentrating meetings in the European, after lunch. Right. But the American morning.
Then you are free in the morning, and for Americans they are free in the afternoon, and they have all the meetings in the same period of the day, right?
Yes. So basically, you do have a lot of time where you get to just sit down and produce undisrupted, which I think is good for the type of work we do.
I fully agree with that. There was a time that I was working both with LATAM and the US, and I had the opportunity in the morning, being based in Europe, to be fully focused on doing what I needed to do, and then in the afternoon only having meetings. And it was one of the most productive times of my life, because then I had my slots to do what I needed to do, and then in the afternoon I would have my time to meet people and organize and align with the team and so on. And of course, there is also the advantage of Europe in that sense, because if you are working also with Asia, you can do the same. In the morning you have the meetings, and then in the afternoon you are free to work in whatever you need to. So that's true. It can be an advantage.
Yeah, and I think there's a cultural dimension here as well, which can be a challenge. But for us, I think it worked out nicely. So I do think if you were to ask people within Aquaticode, they would tell you that this is a very nice place to work, and there's a good relationship with the colleagues.
Right.
Maybe it has to do also with the fact that we are an early stage company. There's a
Right.
lot of course, unforeseen events and problem solving. You're in the trenches together all the time, and I do think that creates
Yeah.
strong bonds between the people you work with and yourself.
It's a good point, and I think it's also related with the profile of the people. There are people, especially in early stage, we would say even the opposite, right? There are so many changes, so many iterations that it would be good to be together in the same space, because it's easy to need to have those tough discussions or to pivot some solutions. But at the same time, you also need to have a certain emotional and psychological profile to be able, and we know there are people that prefer and are much more productive working in a remote setting and in a multicultural setting, and they will be super bored if they would need to go to the office, and if they would have peers or colleagues all of the same nationality of the same city. We know, at least for me, it's super important to have multicultural team members, and to work with different nationalities, to have my own rhythm, my own biorhythm. And it's good to be in person, as you said, but again, it's enough to be once a month or once a quarter, to spend a week together, to be able then to make even remote more effective, right?
Yeah, and to travel for purposes, like you don't necessarily need to be with everyone every time you travel
Exactly.
somewhere. You can have specific meetings around specific topics that applies to a group of people within the company. I think it's I mean, it has advantages and challenges, right? You just need to
Right.
be mindful of how to hone both of them the right way.
The decision you made, absolutely. And in that sense, to also put together the team to hire new members, we know, especially in early stages, one of the main challenges is we know that the first people that we hire can break the company, right? So if we don't hire well. And I think that in that sense, the venture builder support, when they have an HR function or a people function, people and culture function, it helps the entrepreneurs to ensure that they are hiring the right people for the right seats. Did it help?
Yeah, you're right, and I think that's also a privilege of being part of a venture builder. We don't, so everyone we've hired within the organization now is core business. They are technologists, or they are engineers, or they are working with the product in one way or another.
Amazing.
Legal, finance, HR, especially recruiting and marketing. We have people in the venture builder that helps the portfolio companies with these things. So we have, for example, a very competent legal function that Aquaticode can use, that I think normally you'd have to be a bigger company than we are to have the strength of that particular function, right? But we're able to use it because we don't use them all the time, but when we use them, they are there, and then they are ready to work with us.
Sounds great. So this is also an advantage, is you are able to kind of delegate the support functions, or have the support on the support functions, and then have the core and the go-to-markets inside your scale-up, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good way to keep the organizational chart lean, I think. So we're definitely not bloated when it comes to people, but I do think we have the relevant people in the right places.
Yeah. Something interesting that we always discuss here on the show, it's the importance of radical focus to scale, right? So should we go to expand the company? Typically, we discuss a lot opening new geographies, selling the same product to new geographies, or adding industries, or adding different sizes of companies, kind of starting with SMB and then going to enterprise customers. Here, it seems that you are very focused on what is the aquaculture industry, and you are launching new products to solve the needs of that sector. So, I found it interesting when we were preparing this podcast, the way that you ensure focus for your company, which I think it's quite innovative, and I've seen other companies doing the same, but it's rare. So I'd love you to explain, how do you keep the focus with Aquaticode?
Yeah, I really like that question. So for us, I think it's about balancing focus and aspiration. Like, so if you take a business 101 class, it will tell you to stick to the core, which of course, and especially I think when you're a growing company, it requires laser sharp focus to transform an idea to a commercial success. Um, because a narrower path, I think logically should solidify your trajectory, it should deepen your expertise, it should clarify priorities, and it should also determine resource allocation. But in my mind also, it can constrain vision, right? So innovation happens when we broaden our horizons, when we are curious and courageous in exploring new opportunities. And the major breakthroughs, I think, are very likely to come from unexpected places, let's put it that way. So, but that's not to say I think that we should divide our attention equally in 5 different directions. So we work with multiple species, we work with the innovation project at multiple stages, but we don't necessarily do 20% effort this, 20% this, 20% this, 20% this, and 20% this, right? Typically, what we do is we work 80%. We spend 80% of our effort on focused execution. For us, that's launching the Sort Pro now, which is the machine that I was talking about earlier. We spend 80% of the organization's resources on the machine. But then also we spend maybe 20% of the organizational resources on aspirational exploration, right?
Got it.
So I do think keeping to the core and having a good focus and being able to execute and actually finish things, wrap things up, get them into the market, I think is super important. But I don't necessarily think it's a contradiction to also working on what's beyond that first milestone, or what's beyond that first product. And to give you one example, although this isn't, I wouldn't consider this aspirational. This is much more near term. But the machine that we built, the primary or the first function will be gender sorting. But we're adding a lot of other features to the machine, so it's actually more of a platform than a machine, right?
Got it.
It can collect a lot of data through RGB imaging and through ultrasound, and we can get a lot of information. And we're launching with one particular thing, but then we can expand it, right? We can launch new features that look for new things in the Salmon, and then we have more visionary things that we think will have a tremendous impact on aquaculture, but we know it's going to take some time to get it into the market, right? We know we have to balance the near and the long term.
So kind of the IP and the technology is the same, but the use case is different, and the segment that you are using the use case for is also different. I'm not a specialist in the area, but you can use the same technology to solve problems related with salmon and also with shrimp. But it's the same technology, but the use case and of course the application is different.
And for a large part of it, it's the same team as well, right? And when you work with innovation, you'll have somebody who does the earlier stuff, getting to the proof of concept, right? And then you'll have somebody who will work towards a minimum viable product, and then eventually a product. And it's not necessarily the same people who does all of these different stages. So I also think it's a good way to keep people in the organization challenged and busy, is to sort of have a good view of a portfolio of innovation products.
Right. Good point. Something, of course, that I was understanding that you have a component of hardware, but I think that you also have some thoughts around that, how to keep software first and how to be able to deal with hardware in this case for the different products that you are launching.
Yeah, so we have an automation engineer employed at Aquaticode. So it's very important for us to have domain knowledge internally in the company. But then we also rely heavily on hardware partners, because we're not an automation company. We have some competency for automation, but we don't have a workshop. We don't have anywhere to bend metal or to I think that's something that we acknowledge is better left to someone else, and then we can focus on the vision, we can focus on the direction, we can focus on the product side of the automation, and we can focus on the AI, which essentially is our core. And there's a lot of very good engineering partners out there, both when it comes to design and manufacturing. So I also think we don't need to do all of it, right? That there are people who are experts in this that we can build something together with. But for us then, since you mentioned IP, we always maintain ownership, right?
Right.
That's an important part. It's always sort of it's our machine, it's our vision. We are the ones who's standing there at the drawing board, etc. But then somebody else puts it out to life.
Right. And in terms of the variables to scaling up Aquaticode, do you see certain geographies? Again, this is a very specific industry. We are trying to extract some of the lessons learned scaling up a company and having a diverse view on the process of scaling up. But do you see that there are specific countries where you can have more success, or do you see that you will be focused on just one country and then adding new products? So what would be kind of your strategies to scale up Aquaticode?
Yeah, so for the different aquatic species, it's actually different countries. So if you use salmon as an example, half of the salmon in the world is farmed here in Norway. And then 25% is farmed in Chile, and then the other big players are Canada, UK, and Australia. So those are the very natural markets for us. When it comes to shrimp, then it's a bigger picture, right? You have Ecuador, you have Vietnam, you have India, etc., etc., etc. So the geography, I think, of shrimp farming is larger than salmon. Also, the customer is quite different. So the salmon industry is a lot more consolidated than the shrimp industry. So you have big players within the salmon industry, which from a sales perspective means you get to spend a lot of time talking to these players and building relationships and collaborating with them. In shrimp farming, you have big players as well, and you have some very big players, and you can do the same there. But then you also have a long tail of smaller farmers.
Got it. And do you see there that you will keep adding different fish species, or it is possible to be able to build a very big business just within salmon and the shrimp species?
Salmon and shrimp, I think, are the two largest species in aquaculture. Okay. So you can build a big business in any of them. Right? If you just one. Just one. If you limited yourself to salmon, you can build a very big business in AI there, and you can do the same in shrimp. So we chose to do both for the reasons that I mentioned, the aspirational and the sort of the looking at what's around the curve, and also recognizing that they're both very important and high growth species. That will have a tremendous impact on our planet overall if it's done right and if it's scaled right.
Right. So, and do you see that you would be limiting now your growth to those two species and focus there, or are you still planning to add more species to the portfolio of fish? I love this show. I have to say, because it's challenging me. It's a new industry for me.
I think I think we're curious by nature, so we are interested in talking to industry players of other species as well. We're not limited to shrimp and salmon, but for practical reasons, our immediate roadmap is around shrimp and salmon, because even if the aspirational work or the exploratory work happens in the 20%, there's only so many things you can have going on in those 20% as well.
Right.
But we do have a dialogue with industry players that aren't from salmon and from shrimp.
Yeah. So in other words, I think that you keep your organization as a scale up, building new startups and launching new products that need to go through finding problem solution fit, product market fit before going into go-to-market fit and scaling up. And something that I like it for you to kind of define the core is the combination of, so where is your core is the combination of AI, R&D, and aquaculture. So it's and being kind of software first and focusing on the technology and being able to develop that technology, and also being able to create a defensible proprietary technology for Aquaticode, right?
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why we've been able to cover so much R&D ground is because we can do a lot with small data sets. So part of our expertise is actually working with small data sets, and it's important when it comes to the life sciences, because you cannot go online and just buy a library of whatever you're looking at, right? You have to do groundwork, you have to get your hands dirty and collect data, and it's a massively resource intensive process in itself. So being able to draw meaning from smaller data sets, I think is also an important part of the core.
Got it. And something that I found interesting is then we were, of course, I was focusing myself on this is a aquaculture business, but the way you related the problem and the solution and your journey with the vision and the importance and the impact that this vision will have in solving the problems of the globe and of the human species, it was very, very inspiring. So how do you see the future of Aquaticode, and how do you see the impact? I really enjoy the way you articulated your narrative, right?
Thank you. Yeah, so the let's say the higher purpose is definitely there, and aquaculture is part of the future. And then within aquaculture, you have 5 major trends going on. So it's recirculating aquaculture systems, which is what I talked about earlier. You have novel feed ingredients, you have the Internet of Things, you have selective breeding, and then you have AI. I think AI will have a tremendous effect on aquaculture as it has in any industry, because you're able to classify and make predictions at the blink of an eye, right? You're able to have consistent, transparent, sustainable decisions made. And if you put automation around that, which is what we're doing, right? You're able to do it at very high speed and at scale. And I think you don't need to look too far from aquaculture to see how the combination of automation and AI is really a game changer. I mean, it's the 4th industrial revolution, isn't it?
Right.
So, and I do think it's a very natural next step for the industry. I think it will have a tremendous impact. And for us, we also chose specifically to focus on biology, number 1, because Nature Capital, that's part of their core expertise. But number 2, also because we think a lot of the potential is there. And specifically, if you can focus on early, in the case of salmon, you can focus on predicting performance traits, biological traits, animal welfare, farm management related topics at a very early stage, and being able to make decisions for the fish almost at an individual level at an early stage. That really has a big impact on the full life cycle of the fish.
Wow. Super inspiring, and great to see that we have been seeing kind of the software is eating the world, and now it's all about AI is eating the world and all the industries. So there is so much to do, and we are just seeing that with the ChatGPT bot circulating across LinkedIn and everywhere about what can be automated, or how much that solution can help us humans to focus on what can make the difference, right? And yeah, time flies, and so we are getting closer to the last segment of the show. But before, everyone always likes to listen about fundraising lessons and what has been your journey fundraising wise. So how has been the evolution, or how many rounds did you raise? How it happens, because you are also involved again in the venture builders we've been discussing since the beginning. So what are some of your tips and lessons learned, and what has been your journey so far with Aquaticode?
Yeah, so I think it was in September, we announced that we did a 6 million Series A fundraise.
Awesome.
And I actually think this is another key benefit of being backed by a venture builder. So Naked Capital has a very strong track record. So when we were fundraising, we primarily did it through their existing network. Some of the investors had, successfully invested in other companies within the portfolio with significant returns, and we're reinvesting that money. And I think it's easier to join, let's say, a voyage when you already know the crew. But beyond this, I also think beyond the current network that they already have, I think having them and their name behind us helps us open a lot of doors. It does make a statement, I think, about who we are as a company. We're not first-time travelers. We're not a small band of people. We have a whole system behind us. Not that there's nothing wrong with being first-time travelers or
Exactly.
a small band of people, but I think for us that made the fundraising a lot easier. So we didn't actually. I mean, fundraising is never easy, but we didn't have major challenges closing the round.
How long did it take? Because everyone has a different experience. And
that's I'm not actually sure, but let's say around half a year or something. But it's a bit of a process, isn't it? Because you keep dialogue with investors, ideally when you're not fundraising also. So I also talk actively to investors. On a monthly basis, even though we're not fundraising, just to make sure that you have the relationship and they know about you. And if we were to do another round, I think it's an easier place to be in when you have somebody who knows you and they've followed your progress and they know what's going on. So that's why I think the lines between active fundraising and then just talking to investors is a bit blurry.
Right. So it's a really good tip that we have shared here on the show several times, just keeping potential and current investors on the know, and sharing regular updates is super important, especially because you need to do that for the ones who are already investors, but for the potential investors, nobody obliges you to do it, but it helps to create a relationship and to create confidence, and even sometimes for them to be able to help out. So it's always good to just prepare a short email where you share kind of the progress every 2 months or every quarter at least. It helps a lot to create that relationship and to keep potential investors on the know and to build that relationship. Awesome. So let's go into the last segment of the show, where I ask you a quick question. You give me a brief answer, please. And if you'd have the opportunity, Stian, to get back to the beginning, or to the moment that you decided to join Aquaticode and have a coffee with your younger self, what advice would you offer to your younger Stian? It was almost 1 year ago, right? So it was not a very long time ago, but still, I'm sure that you already had some interesting conversation to have with Stian in the beginning.
Yeah. I don't know if I was actually young 1 year ago, but anyway. So I think I would say that it's never the right time to join a startup, but it's also never the wrong time. Right, it's a big leap to take, and for sure, I mean, it's being in an early stage company is something very different from being in a large established company. But I would tell myself to just go for it.
Go for it, and you will. The good thing is that now you have the experience of a startup and scale up, and the experience of a large corporate, right? So you have both, which already differentiates you. And the second one is, what are you the most proud of on your journey so far?
Yeah, that's a big question. Apart from my family and the obvious things, I do actually think it's being part of building Aquaticode. I find it tremendously gratifying to seeing the progress of the team on a week by week and a month by month and then a year by year basis. It's really something special for me.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's all about the people that we spend the time with, or that we invest the time with. Fully agreed. Worst advice ever received?
Trust the universe. Just passively trust it. Don't do anything. Just trust it.
Everything will happen
Yes,
by
exactly.
itself. And it happens. If you don't do anything, it happens.
Yeah, I guess life is it's a series of random events and happenstances. So in some way you are kind of but yeah, that's the worst advice I've gotten.
Got it. That's a good one. A good addition to our list of worst advice received. And now the resources. Your favorite book, it can be business or non-business. This is much more funny segment to get to know our guests.
Yeah, I'm a big sucker for Stephen King's The Dark Tower series. So that's it's a series, so it's not a book, but I really like it.
Okay.
Or I haven't read it for years, but I remember it was a thrilling. I don't know how long the series is, 8,000 pages or something, but
Okay. Well,
it stuck with me.
That's a great adventure.
Yeah.
And your favorite movie or series?
Right now, I'd have to say The White Lotus. I think it's immensely entertaining and sort of intense, but in a very slow way. Suspenseful in a slow way.
Okay. What is the story about? What is the title again, Stian?
The White Lotus.
Okay.
I think
The White Lotus.
I think it's on HBO.
Ah, got it. Okay. For the ones who want to check that out. Okay.
Yeah.
And finally, your favorite podcast, excluding this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Thank you. Very kind of you, Stian.
My favorite podcast, excluding this one, I think is Writing Excuses by Brandon Sanderson. It's about writing, but fiction writing.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I can see where your mind is coming from by the resource you just shared with us. Stian, congrats for your journey and for what you've been doing, and also for sharing fresh insights into the show and making it even more innovative, and for sharing your experience with audience. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And to our community, thanks for being on that side. As you see, we keep inspiring you, we keep bringing you new resources, new insights to make your life a little bit easier as you scale up your business. See you soon and keep scaling.